Hello, my name is Father Howard Giles from Jesus the Good Shepherd Anglican Church. I'm here with my good friend Sheila Siino. Today is Saturday, August the 17th, 2019. And I thought this was a great opportunity to ask you about Father George and Judy and how you met them. And so, how did you meet Father George and Judy?
I was living in California,
Mhm.
and I decided that for some reason, I wanted to, quote, run away from home.
Okay. How old were you?
And I was 20 years old,
Okay.
and I packed up a little U-Haul trailer and just came to Las Vegas, and I got a job, and I had met Eric, their son, and I'm trying to think of the year that was, 1972, I believe.
Where did you meet him?
And we had met because we were going to a counseling group. It was called Focus, and it was run through, I think it was the Clark County at that time, and they had a encounter type group at that time, and he was attending, and I went to one of the meetings, and he and I met, and we became really good friends, and we started dating, and he introduced me to both his mom and dad. And at the time, I was kind of down on myself. I didn't think I was very smart at all. And through their prayers and just being with them, you know, they were just low key and just the wonderful fellowship that I had with them.
So they were at St. Timothy's at
They
that
were
time?
at St. Timothy's, and I started going to St. Timothy's.
Was Eric attending? Was he going to church?
Oh, yes. Eric was attending, and Eric was younger than I was. I think he was 18.
Oh.
And he was 3 years, 2.5, 3 years younger than I was.
You were dating a
I
younger
was.
man. So you were about 20 and he was about 18?
Yes.
Okay.
And we were dating, and I was thinking about going back to school, but I didn't think that I was smart enough. And through Judy and Father George's just love and their fellowship, they kind of encouraged me. And through that, I graduated from the university.
From UNLV?
From UNLV, and
So-
I graduated in social work.
Oh, okay.
And Eric at the time was working in one of the hospitals, I believe. But we were still dating for quite a while.
Yeah. How long do you think it was? that
I
you
think
dated?
maybe 3 years.
Oh, that's a long time.
That was a long time.
Yeah.
About 3 years.
Wow. So kind of in your early 20s and
Yes.
from him being 18 to early 20s.
And I have to remind you too that at St. Timothy's, I think Father George went on a trip to Israel at the time, and St. Timothy's burned at that time.
Oh, really?
And then we went over to St. Peter's,
Yeah.
and you were in my Sunday school class.
Yeah. But that was much later.
That was later. That was
Because it
much
burned-
later.
it
that was
burned
in
twi-
'89, I believe.
Right. It burned twice. So
It was
burned.
the second time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you're in your early 20s and you're going to St. Timothy's and dating Eric. What kind of job did you get when you came to Vegas? What was your first?
I worked at Circus
Oh.
and one of the casinos.
Oh, great.
And I wasn't 21, so I couldn't be on the casino floor. So I was in one of the cages. Have you ever been to Circus? That cage that goes around.
Yeah.
And I was throwing balloons out that had prizes.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
And did you work there while you were going to school?
I quit that job, but I was still at Circus, and I was working in selling real estate.
Oh.
They were selling real estates in one of the booths at the time. It was very, very different. Circus was like a huge, what do I want to say? Very, very popular. That was the place to go.
Right.
You know?
And with all the amusements on the Midway, and so
Yes.
you were working there in the Midway, and like you say, that was the really.
That was a really neat place to go. And after that, when I started school, I worked through a program that was through the probation department.
Oh, okay.
So while I was going to school, I was able to work as a probation, I guess, officer. They said counselor, for Regina Hall Home for Girls out in Henderson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I had 6 high-risk young girls in junior high, high school, and worked for that until I graduated.
So you really grew. You started from a job working at the Midway to really kind of doing ministry with young women and
yes, and that was totally through the fellowship and nurturing that the Gerards gave me.
Yeah.
Because I never would have thought, that was the furthest thing from my mind. For one thing, I didn't think that I was worthy of that.
Yeah.
And never thought that I could get a degree in school.
Yeah.
And their nurturing and their prayers and just their way.
Yeah, I mean, how did they do that? How did they convince you that because you're saying you're questioning your intelligence, your ability. How did they encourage you in that way?
I think I saw for the first time what a family really is, because I came from a single mom, and I mean, she was wonderful, but I didn't have a father figure, and I was pretty stubborn and, going through all that teenage stuff. And I saw something in Father George, Judy, and Eric, and Glenna was going to school in New York, but she would come home, so I saw that family dynamic and what a real family is, and the prayer that happens, non-judgmental. No matter what was going on, there wasn't judgment there. Father George would often say, "Oh, you don't want to do that," and you didn't, or I didn't. I would say, "Oh, okay."
So they treated you like a daughter. They brought you into the family
absolutely.
and treated you like a daughter,
and I
gave you that
lived with
kind
them
of.
for a year. I lived with them almost over a year. I lived with them about a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was this after you all were dating?
During the time I was dating.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I lived there with them while I was going to school.
Oh, okay.
Because I couldn't afford, school and myself. So.
Yeah. So, and this is a question that I don't know how many people can answer. That is, I guess my question is, what affected? I mean, obviously losing a child is a horrible thing for anybody, but I mean, what kind of effect did you think it had on them and their ministry, losing Eric?
I think that they, and I say this, I don't know if it's modesty is the right word, but I always feel that they thought of me as a daughter, and I felt like I lost not only somebody I loved, but also like a brother, a family member, and they were always affected by that. Although Judy was so nurturing and loving, that there were 2 other people that lost their children, and she was able to relate to that and help them through that, just through her experience, I guess, and because who she was, but her experience. I don't know that, how do you ever get over that? You don't get over it, but you certainly learn to handle it, or learn counseling, a different way of counseling through that.
So you think that what changed for them was they were able to do ministry in a different way because of that loss that they experienced. Do you feel like it changed them, like your interaction or the way that you saw them interacting with other people besides that? I mean, did they go through a time of depression or sadness, or, I mean, do you feel like
I'm not sure.
I mean, obviously you were in your own grief, so it's kind of hard to say what theirs was like, but
I think that it made Father George softer. I saw a softer side in him. He was always, he was somebody that you listened to when he talked and had that edge, but I saw him getting softer, and he was able to counsel people a little softer. It wasn't so black and white anymore. There was a little bit of gray in there. With Judy, I never saw a depression in her. I really didn't. I know that she was suffering, but she was so gracious and so filled with the Lord that I just saw her, we'll get through this together, kind of thing. We'll do this together. It was never a, I'm alone, you know. And I was grieving too. I still grieve, you know, for that. A wonderful thing with the two of them, later on in years, in 1984, I was working in a doctor's office with Judy, and I met my husband, Joe, and I introduced, and right away, because I had had a couple boyfriends since then, and Father George was, oh, you don't want him. No, you don't want him. And I thought, oh, okay. But when I introduced Joe, they said he's the one.
Wow.
He's okay.
Wow.
And I thought that was a wonderful thing, and we got married up in Lake Tahoe at Galilee.
Yeah.
And Father George flew up and married us.
Wow.
And that was a wonderful thing.
That is.
That was a wonderful thing.
What a gift.
And then they just took Joe in too, as part of their family. So that was a wonderful thing.
That is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Blessings.
It's good to share.
Good.